Numbers chapter 11. And the people complained in their hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes. When the Lord heard it, his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some of the outlying parts of the camp. Then the people cried out to Moses, and Moses prayed to the Lord. I love this part. And the fire died down. So the name of that place was called Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burned among them. May the Lord write this word upon our hearts. Please be seated. Just right out front, I've got to do this. Now, I want to give you 3 facts about God's people, and then I want to give you 3 warnings issued about God's people. 3 facts about God's people, right here in the context of God's story. Fact number one, Egypt was not a nice place to be. Egypt was not a nice place to be. Here's what God showed me in my heart. This is a fact. Fact number one, Egypt was not a nice place to be. It is not a nice place to be when you're in bondage, my friends. Some of you are in bondage. You're living in war zones. Sin has taken over your life. You're not happy, are you? You have moments of happiness. You're happy when something goes well, or you're happy when you get a good meal. You're happy on occasions, but it's very short-lived. Egypt was not a nice place to be. People were being tortured. Their hearts were being ripped apart. The picture of Egypt is a picture of a people in bondage, just like America today. Fact number two, food was not a stone's throw away. That's a fact. They were in a desert. I got a lot of good memories about deserts because I spent quite a lot of time in the Namib and Kalahari deserts of southwest and central Africa. A lot of our people have been in a lot of desert regions. Deserts are interesting places, and if I had time to talk to you about it, it's very interesting. Very foreboding. Food is not a stone's throw away. In my experience, we used to do crazy things like sacrifice a little bit of what we called bully beef. And we'd put it out and we'd capture baboons. Because baboons are in the desert, and we'd capture baboons. And one baboon, I remember capturing him. And we tied him up and we fed him little pellets of salt, army-issue salt. By the time the sun came up in the desert, his tongue was, let's say, a little larger than what it usually was. And when he got up in the morning and we got up with the sun and we set Mr. Baboon free, I can guarantee you where he took us. Your pastor has personally trudged after a baboon across a desert because I knew he was going to lead me to food and water, and I needed it in a desert. Now, I'm not going to tell you what we did to the baboon when he got there. But I am going to tell you a fact about what we're reading about, and that is that not only was Egypt not a nice place to be, but food was not a stone's throw away. And number three, bad leadership can bring a great nation to its knees. That's the third fact. Bad leadership can bring a great nation to its knees. Are you listening? This 40-year journey is replete with men who occupied leadership positions who rose up and grumbled among the people and who led them in the wrong direction. And it took a real man of God to stand up. So here are just three very, very basic facts in this story, this 40-year story. Egypt was not a nice place to be, and food was not a stone's throw away, and bad leadership can bring a great nation to its knees. This was a great nation, folks. I didn't even read it to you, but I mean, it begins right there in verse 4 of chapter 11, and you're reading this as you go through the story. I mean, verse 4 is interesting. Now the rabble that was among them had a strong craving. It's an interesting word. Now the rabble among them had a strong craving. In fact, when you get on into this passage, for example, when you get into chapter 12, you even discover that great people like Miriam and Aaron had their moments, just like all of us. When I began to read this, I thought of how many times I have begun to grumble or moan or complain. And because I've done that, somebody else has been affected by it. Someone said to me one time, Phil, you lead our college and young adult ministries, and God is doing such an incredible thing among our young adults and our college ministries. And by the way, so glad you had a great retreat this past week. Wonderful, man. Merge is just, I'm telling you, God is doing something among our college students and our young adults. And Phil, I'm going to just tell you something. There are many people, I'm not telling you anything. Wherever Seth is right now, I'd tell the same thing to Seth. People want to know all the time, well, so what is wrong with me going to this place? Well, there's nothing wrong per se with you going to that place, excepting that you're leading somebody else to go there too. Do you know, I want every husband to look at me here. Every dad, every husband, just look at me, guys, because I'm one of you. Every time you and I treat our wives disrespectfully, do you know what you've just said to your daughter? Do you know what we've just said to our sons? So why are you behaving like that? I know I may be getting... Bad leadership can bring a great nation to its knees.